The cargo bay of the Pathfinder hummed with its usual symphony of interstellar life hydraulics hissing, magnetic clamps locking into place, and the low drone of life support forcing recycled air through kilometers of ductwork. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation window, hands clasped behind her back, watching the Christian delegation prepare to depart. They moved with the smooth synchronicity of a pack species. Silver fur rippled along their shoulders and spines, each motion echoing through the group like a shared thought. Today, that thought was discussed. One figure sat apart near the loading ramp, small for its species. Wrapped in a too large utility harness, the juvenile Christian hunched as if trying to fold out of existence. Patches of dark fur mottled its limbs and throat, stark against the metallic sheen of the others. The briefing notes had called it a developmental anomaly in Christian culture. The darker markings were a visible flaw. Its ears drooped, luminous. Amber eyes tracked the movements of the pack with a desperate, starving hope. Hope that, Sarah knew, would go unfulfilled. Bootsteps rang softly on the deck behind her. Captain, came Jake Morrison's voice, her first officer. The Christians are requesting immediate departure clearance. They seemed agitated. Let them wait, Sarah said, not taking her eyes off the juvenile. Tell me about the kid. Jake stepped up beside her and flicked his datapad on. Scrolling through the manifest logs, blue-white light washed across his face. Designation, Cree 7. He read, flagged as developmental anomaly. The darker for patterning is considered a genetic defect. The pack brought it aboard 3 weeks ago as a laborer, but it hasn't met their standards. He hesitated. They're leaving it behind. Standard abandonment protocol when a member is deemed unworthy. Sarah's jaw tightened. She dealt with 100 species across a dozen sectors. She'd seen rituals, taboos, and customs that the guild insisted she respect. But one thing never failed to ignite her temper: watching someone get thrown away. That's a child, she said flatly. Technically, it's about 14 standard years in Christian development. Jake nodded. So yes, that's a child. He recognized the shift in her posture, the slight lift of her chin, the way her shoulders set. After 5 years under her command, he knew the look that meant the protocol manuals were about to become flexible. Get me a translator, Sarah said. I'm going down there. The cargo bay air smelled of ionized metal, and the sharp tang of Christian scent markers, territory claims sprayed in invisible patterns. Across the deck, dock workers hurried past, giving the lone juvenile a wide berth, eyes carefully averted. No one wanted to be caught between a pack and its discarded problem. The young Christian looked up as Sarah approached, its entire body tensing in the universal flinch of someone expecting another blow. Up close, she saw more than the dark patches of fur. There was intelligence in those eyes, sharp, restless, and caged by fear. Hey there, Sarah said quietly. Her wrist translator rendered the words into the harmonic chords of Christian speech, a layered sound that thrummed faintly in her chest. The juvenile's ears twitched in startled confusion. I'm Captain Chen, she continued. What's your name? The Christian blinked. Designation, Creamunit 7, the translator reported, formal and flat. That's not a name. Sarah said. She crouched until they were eye level. That's inventory tracking. I asked what you want to be called. For a long moment, the young one just stared. Names, the briefing had said, were pack given rewards for physical perfection, flawless performance. Defects didn't get names, they got numbers. Finally, its throat worked. Ka, it said. So softly the translator almost missed it. Sarah smiled. Nice to meet you. Ka. She extended her hand. Palm up, a human gesture, open and empty. The Christian's nostrils flared as it inhaled her scent. After a long, shaky pause, it placed its six-fingered hand lightly against hers, as if expecting the contact to hurt. Your pack is leaving, Sarah said. Did they tell you that? 'Cause ears flattened hard against its skull. I am defective, the translator echoed. The pack has no place for imperfection. I see, Sarah said softly. Do you want to go with them? Chris' gaze flicked toward the loading ramp where its pack moved in cold, efficient formation. Then back to her when it finally spoke. The word was so quiet it barely registered. No. Sarah nodded once. Good. Because from what I've seen, they're idiots who wouldn't recognize potential if it bit them on the tail. Chris' ears twitched again, alarm, confusion. Then the tiniest flicker of something that might someday be amusement. Here's my offer. Sarah shifted to sit cross-legged on the deck, making herself smaller, less threatening. I need a junior systems operator. The pay is standard guild rates. Quarters are small, but private. My crew doesn't care what color your fur is. You work hard, you learn fast, and you treat my people with respect. We'll do the same for you. Interested? 'Cause eyes widened, pupils dilating with shock. I have no credentials, no training certifications. The pack says I am too slow to. To the pack, Sarah interrupted. You're defective. Cargo. She let steel edge her voice. They just tried to abandon a kid at a trade station because they don't like how you look. Forgive me if I don't put much stock in their opinion of your capabilities. Ka stared at her, breathing, quick and shallow. I'm not asking for a resume, Sarah said. I'm asking if you want a place where you belong. Yes or no? Slowly, like a system booting from cold storage, Ka nodded. Yes, it whispered. Good answer. Sarah rose in one practiced movement. Then let's make it official. The Christian pack leader was waiting near the corridor entrance, a towering male with a lattice of pale scars across his muzzle. His silver fur stood on end, bristling like a drawn blade. Two other pack members flanked him, eyes hard. He stepped into Sarah's path, looming over her. Human, he growled. The translator turned the sound into words, but couldn't soften the contempt. The defective remains with the pack. It is pack property. You have no authority. Actually, Sarah tapped her wrist display. A holoscreen flared to life. Above her forearm, projecting the station's cargo registry, according to station records. You logged Chris' abandoned cargo 47 minutes ago, she said. That means salvage rights apply. I'm claiming them. The pack leader's fur flared even higher. You cannot treat a crit as salvage, he spat. The council will be very interested to hear, Sarah said coolly, that you're abandoning juveniles at trade stations She flicked her wrist, opening another file. I've already submitted the preliminary report to station administration. Chris, now a registered crew member of the ECS Pathfinder. You've got a problem with that. Take it up with the guild. His claws slid from their sheaths with a metallic rasp. For a heartbeat, the cargo bay narrowed to a razor point. Bared teeth, coiled muscles, the air thick with aggression pheromones. Sarah watched his weight shift, the beginning of a lunge. Captain, Jake's voice came from just behind her shoulder. He'd arrived without her noticing, hand resting meaningfully on his sidearm. Behind him stood 3 more of her people. Marcus Hall, chief engineer, still in a grease-stained work vest. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's medic, small and calm, and Torres, security chief. All relaxed stance and ready violence, for sets of human eyes fixed on the pack leader. None of them wavered. Your loss, Sarah said, her tone almost light. Now get off my ship. For a long, crackling moment, the pack and the humans faced each other across an invisible line. Then the pack leader's lip peeled back in a final snarl. He turned sharply, barking orders. The Christian delegation filed up the ramp in perfect formation, not one of them looking back at the small figure standing behind the humans. Crow watched them go, shoulders rigid, claws digging into the deck. Sarah waited until the boarding hatch sealed with a heavy thud. The bay lights dimmed as power rerouted, and the distant vibration of thrusters grew. Come on, Kra, she said gently. Let's go meet your new pack. 3 months later, the hum of the Pathfinder's engineering bay had become familiar to Custedi and layered, like a complex chord. Today it carried an extra buzz of energy. Plasma conduits glowed a muted blue beneath their shielding. Diagnostic holos hovered in the air, strings of numbers tumbling down their surfaces. Somewhere deep in the ship's spine, the drive core throbbed with contained power. Sarah paused in the doorway and watched. Ko stood on a maintenance platform beside Marcus, dark for now sleek and healthy under the bay lights. The juvenile's movements had lost their earlier uncertainty. Now they were quick, precise, confident. A spill of fiber-optic bundles hung from an open panel, shimmering as data pulsed through them. We've improved efficiency by 12%, Crow was saying, ears perked forward. If we reroute the secondary feedback loop through the tertiary regulator and adjust phase alignment here, a long, clawed finger tapped a section of the holo schematic. The simulation updated, numbers jumping. We can copy the gain across at least 37% of the auxiliary systems. 'Cause being modest, Marcus said, grinning as he wiped his hands on a rag. Kids spotted a resonance issue our engineers have been poking at for 2 years. Total natural. 'Cause fur rippled with visible pleasure at the praise. A rolling shimmer from throat to tail tip. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. The difference was staggering. The hunched, silent creature from the cargo bay was gone. In its place stood a young specialist whose eyes shone with purpose from a nearby workstation. Dr. Tanaka glanced up from a med drone. Don't inflate their ego too much, Marcus, she said mildly. I still need them to remember to eat. I eat, Ko protested, startled into speaking without the translator's delay. Then, catching itself, It added more formally, Dr. Tanaka monitors my intake. I am sufficient. Tanaka's eyes crinkled. That's almost a compliment. I'll take it. The engineering bay filled with a ripple of easy laughter. Torres, leaning in the doorway with a mug of something that probably wasn't regulation. Coffee, shook her head. Careful, Kerr, she said. First they praise you. Then they start handing you all the boring maintenance schedules. I already have the boring maintenance schedules, Kerr said, ears tilting. They are satisfying. Marcus barked a laugh. See, perfect engineer. Sarah stepped forward. Good work, she said. Both of you. Marcus straightened automatically. Cornelia stumbled off the platform in its haste to stand. At attention, relax, Sarah added, smiling. Kerr, you're officially promoted to systems specialist. Comes with a pay raise and your own quarters on deck 3. Marcus, make sure the guild paperwork gets filed. On it, Captain, Marcus said, already calling up forms. My own quarters. Kerr's voice wobbled. Its ears danced. Sarah had learned that meant emotions to tangle, to sort. I will not be in the communal berth. Specialists get their own space, Sarah said. You've earned it. Kerr opened its mouth, closed it again. The fur along its spine lifted and smoothed in waves. It took a breath that sounded almost like a sob, except Christians weren't supposed to sob. I thank you, it managed. I will not fail the pack. Sarah let the words sit there. Pack. It didn't mean what it once had for Kerr. Not a ruthless hierarchy, not a system that measured worth in uniform fur and flawless performance. This pack laughed in engineering bays and argued over coolant flows. It dragged exhausted crewmen to the medbay whether they liked it or not. It showed up in cargo bays when someone decided a kid was disposable. She turned toward the corridor, then paused to look back. Kerr and Marcus were already bent over the console again, arguing cheerfully about phase variance tolerances. Tanaka was muttering to her med-drone. Torres had taken over a corner of the room, mug in hand, pretending not to listen. Sarah thought about the Christian pack, somewhere in the cold, glittering sprawl of space. Wondered if they ever regretted their decision. Wondered if they even remembered. The dark-furred juvenile they had listed as cargo. Probably not. Species built on ruthless perfection rarely looked back. But that was fine. Their loss had been the Pathfinder's gain. More importantly, it had been Kerr's salvation. In the end. Sarah reflected as she stepped into the lift. That was what mattered. Not the arbitrary standards of a prejudiced pack. Not the neat lines of non-interference clauses that looked good in guild handbooks and fell apart in front of a frightened child. What mattered was the stubborn human conviction that everyone deserved a chance to prove their worth. It was the same conviction that had carried humanity to the stars in fragile ships and kept them there against long odds and longer distances. The galaxy called it foolish sentiment. Humans had another word for it. They called it crew.